So we're gonna get into some details. Hopefully I will answer more questions and raise some, but this is the ADA, so, I just wanna say what we're gonna cover in this session is, our requirements, curb ramp components, utilities, APS, or accessible pedestrian signals, and we'll do odds and ends that I've seen along the way. So you've seen this before. This is a really good little chart to have. It's in the details, it's in the guidance. Again, I think that Atlee may have touched on it. Marcel's going to touch on it. There are no tolerances allowed where there are maximum and minimum. 2% is 2%, 8.3% is 8.3%. There are no tolerances. That comes to surprise to some folks because it's something new. But if I go out and an inspector goes out and measures a curb ramp and it's 8.5%, we can't say it's compliant. It's a non-compliant ramp. So we're trying to get these compliant. So we need to try to get the best we can and build under. We've been talking about that. Build under the actual maximums, minimums, or over the minimum. So where must curb ramps be provided? So they're needed whenever a sidewalk or other pedestrian walkway crosses a vehicular pedestrian path of travel. That's a driveway, a street, whatever. That's a curb ramp. That lets somebody off the ramp and across to another one, which is pretty much what that says. So there's different slopes that you have to look at. This is the original, everybody has these, right? We don't even make many of these unless we're at the mid-block. But the running slope is up the curb. The cross slope is across the curb. The running slope should be no more than 8.3%. The cross slope should be no more than 2%. And both slopes should be measured at the center of the ramp. And that's why if you're chasing these things and you got it, if we should get a class action lawsuit, we could tell the DOJ that's how we're measuring them. And that's how we've told our inspectors and our collectors who are gathering information. Middle of the ramp, middle of the ramp. Flush transitions. Those are at both the bottom of the ramp and the top of the ramp, and those should be flush. There shouldn't be any thing that impedes the chair getting up and off the ramp. They allow for a ½ inch, but we try to get them as flush as possible. Flared sides. On some curb ramps don't have flared sides. Some have one flared side if they're on an apex or something. But flared sides are the curb terminals. They're often found where there are perpendicular ramps to the road, and these should be no more than 10% at the flare. And so we said 8-foot curb ends, or perhaps longer if you're, depending on what you're measuring. This is something that we missed a lot over the years, and we're not alone across the country. I don't know why. They've been in the standard detail for years. But a level landing or a level turning space is really critical. It's vital to ensure that a chair can get up and off the ramp or onto the road, so they don't have to go down a flare or something that isn't flat and easy. They also allow a chair to avoid the ramp. So you don't have to go down the ramp if you don't want to, because maybe you don't want to go down the ramp. Maybe you want to just go around it or through it. And they should be no more than 2% in both directions. So it should be flat as ADA requires. 2% is for drainage allowance. And this is a really good picture of why we require landing. If you're in a chair and you want to go over here, you've got to go down and up and around and down and up like this. Down an 8.3% ramp and then back up the flare. And that is really difficult to do and takes a lot of energy. Counter slopes. We have some concerns with counter slopes because of a lot of crowns that we have on our roads. So counter slope is that slope that's coming into the ramp, and it should be no more than 5%. If you've got a ramp that's like that, and you've got an 8.3 and a 5%, you're gonna catch a footrest, or you're gonna throw yourself backwards. So ADA says no more than 5%. Diagonal curb ramps, we have a lot of these. You need to have, they're very difficult to make compliant, especially on preservation projects. Reconstructing, you can do a lot more, but these usually will have to be reconstructed, because very, very rarely do they have a flat landing space, unless you've got a big wide sidewalk up above it. And we're moving away from these, and Marcel will talk more about these, especially in full design. Parallel curb ramps are what we're trying to use more of, that brings the ramp down to a flat space where you can turn and exit the area. And this is an example where the detectable warnings aren't placed right, but when you've got retaining walls, no space behind for turning space, you can bring it down, they can land flat and cross sidewalk. And this is a mid-block crosswalk, but we also using them on diagonal curves. So again, the approaches act as that ramp. And the bottom of the ramps are turning spaces. And the detectable warnings can be part of that turning space. So that's just something important to know. This is an example of a diagonal parallel ramp where you're bringing it down, and you really, the back curve is really important here, and we'll talk more about that later in some of our examples. But if you can create a back curve to allow for that ramp to come down, that's a really good way to do it. But then again, 8%, 8.3, 8.3, 2% on both sides. Diagonal clear space. This is allows for a chair to make a decision. It allows them to be out of the path of travel. And a lot of that is striping, but it's really difficult to do sometimes if you've got really narrow lanes in urban areas and you're trying to provide a place for a chair that's coming down an 8.3% ramp to stop and make a decision at the bottom as well. And that can be 5%, but it needs to be outside the traveling lane. These are perpendicular curb ramps. This one here, not the best example of a compliant ramp. I wouldn't say that it is, but at the top there's a flat landing space so they can make a decision to go down either one of these ramps or kind of go around it. Return curves are allowed, but not like this. They should never be put where there's a path of travel. If you have an esplanade or you've got poles or things like that, a return curve might be appropriate to get around them, to not lead people into them, and having some sort of way to remove people around them. And we do use built-up curves. Somebody mentioned yesterday, these can be really helpful when we're doing our work zone curbing, work zone ramps, trying to get people to a different section where there might not be a ramp there. But we use these. They should never be in the path of travel. And of course, we'll learn earlier about parking and where parking should be. And those are similar to bump ups. Bump ups are the whole ramp design into the bump. Detectable warnings. So detectable warnings, there's been a lot of conversation about detectable warnings over the years. Why do we have them? Why do we have detectable warnings on our curb ramps?
For the blind.
For the blind, and why would the blind need them?
To know when they're at a street crossing.
Right. Because years ago we used to have these, right? And then when we started making them accessible for wheelchairs, a visually impaired individual lost their cue to where that curb was. So they could walk right out into the road. So the people who do these things designed the detectable warning field. So when they put their cane on those bumps, they can feel them, or underfoot, and they can say, not which way do I go, but stop. You're at an intersection. The plates should be at the bottom of the ramp, if possible. They don't have to be right at the very edge, but they should close the opening. They alert them to stop, not direct. And they should be placed the full width of the ramp, excluding including we have an edging that makes them more visible, 4-inch edging, on some of those plates. And they should be 2 feet deep. They're needed at intersections that are signalized, either with a stop sign, perhaps a yield sign, a traffic signal, and at MaineDOT crossings and some railroad crossings. So whenever somebody's entering into a roadway, that second one really applies, so they'll know to stop. They're not needed at driveways or parking lots unless there's a stop sign, a signalized intersection there, like at a Hannaford or even some places. I was talking yesterday about a school in the western part of the state that put them in because the kids were coming out like into the droves with their cars, and it was a parking lot, and they put them in there just to stop anybody who was visually impaired from walking out in front of it. These aren't detectable warnings. I don't think I have to say this anymore, but we see a lot of the stuff out there. This is a tripping hazard, and this is just really creative, but doesn't do much for anybody. Any questions on detectable warnings? Yeah.
So just a quick question. I know it's been talked about, but at a signalized intersection, in terms of if you have a signal that is crossing and you have a median, you're not putting detectable warning fields in those medians, or?
Yeah, we're gonna get to that later with that's the median crossings, yeah. Yeah, if you're walking through, you want people to walk through, not stop in the middle, but we'll get to that in just a second. I'm gonna talk about those types of ramps. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about utilities. See a lot of this. We sometimes see some of this. This one here I like because this is compliant. But I don't think if you're visually impaired, you wanna walk that gauntlet. So, just something to think about when they're putting out guy wires and stuff, you know, where they're putting them and how much room there is for people and how dangerous it might be. Always think of the user. And this here, you need to come out around that pole to fix that, but there are a lot of those here in the state. Mighty oaks, a lot of tree plantings that have grown over the years to be deadly fixed objects for one thing, but also impact the sidewalk. And just when you're working with your landscape designer, understand that, and the town, understand that these things need to be maintained, and this is very dangerous. And sometimes I see people who at conferences, ADA conferences, people with visual impairments who will have lots of scars on their foreheads and their faces because they walk into things like that. But they can't see them, and it hurts. So again, the user. Okay, so again, think about the user. ADA now requires 3 feet around a pole, but it will require 4 with PROAC. We're gonna try to shoot for 4 when we can get it. Sometimes we can't. But this one right here, if you can come out around that, this is 3 feet. But this is quite a grade right here. If you're coming down in a chair to negotiate yourself around that pole, is really difficult. So if you can come out wider, make it easier for the user. Not just, oh, we got the 3 feet and walk on by, but all right, we've got 3 feet, but we want to make sure that this is usable for somebody who has a disability. Just important things that I've run into. Sometimes we do it right. And that's not, but this is town, but you know, you went around that drainage, and that's great. But see this pole back here? 27.5 inches around it. Now they did it around the drainage, but they didn't go around the pole. It's just things that, you know, you're not thinking, you're thinking there are a bunch of poles this way that they're not gonna get down anyway. So I don't know if that was the reason, but people could cross here and go down a full complete sidewalk. And up here, there's a great big opening. So this would be the safest route, but you can't get around that pole. So just little things to think about when you're working your project. Any questions on that, utilities? We're gonna talk about drainage a little separately, but accessible pedestrian signals. These are devices that, inform people with visual impairments about how to get across an intersection. And there are people in the state of Maine that train people on how to use these. But what I'm finding is they're not really being placed properly in a lot of areas. Installation recommendations are in the MUTCD, and when PROAG is promulgated and passed, that's what it refers to. So you have to follow the MUTCD. The MUTCD says the landings should be at the furthest, the APS should be at the furthest side, not here, but here, and you should try to get them 10 feet. They should be 6 feet from the curb, no more, and you try to get them 10 feet apart. Because they're beeping, and you want that noise to be distinctive. So again, when the PROAG is approved, it's going to refer to the MUTCD, so you should as well. The reality is when retrofitting, this is really difficult when we're trying to get poles in areas where we've got ACEC curb ramp, and it's really difficult to get. It allows for APS to be on the same pole or closer than 10 feet apart, but you have to use the audible speak walk message. So it can't be the beeping. It has to say, safe to cross, green street, or stop. So you need to have that messaging on those. They just can't be beeping. The tactile arrow is this little thing right here. And what people with visual impairments do is they feel that and they can feel the arrow. It needs to be aligned with the, it needs to be aligned with the crossing. And it should be raised. And it should be vibro-tactile so you can feel it. So we're missing some things. This one isn't going across the crosswalk. This is going to hell. And this one here, that's not where the crosswalk goes. The crosswalk is right in front of this. So it needs to be unobstructed. These should be placed adjacent to a level weathered surface, so you can land and press the button. Not going down the ramp and pressing the button in a chair. You need to be able to reach that. It should be between 42 and 48 inches high, and you should be able to get up to it with a chair and sit and press the button. The tactile arrow, again, points in the direction of the crossing. This is an interesting one. Looks good from this side, but not really. But we had a lot of encroachment, so they did the best they could. From the other side, you can't even see it. You need to have those things out. You might have to use a stub pole, but then Jay showed me a picture of a stub pole this morning that got smashed by a plow. So you may have to reposition some things. And use 2 APS on a single pole if you need to, but it needs to be, again, speech walk indicators. Be aware of where you put the hardware. This is my little dude I drew the other day. I had some of that, but I was in a place a couple weeks ago. And if you're a visually impaired individual and you're going down to press this button down here, you're going to hit that with your head.
Yeah.
And that's really dangerous. You shouldn't have more than 4 inches into the pedestrian circulation path. And protrusions should be above 80 inches. So if you've got some things that are wide, you need to put them above the signs or above the pole. On the other side of the street, they had this, but it was on the other side, so at least they weren't going right down into it. But there's also on the PED stub poles, if you've got the sign and the PED signal down here, you're going to go right down into that sign. So you need to be careful where those are placed, because people can't see them. Any questions on APS? Yeah.
The reach from where you're sitting.
Yeah, 10 inches. It should be 10 to 15 inches. 10 to 15 inches. You shouldn't have to go like this. Drainage grates. If you have drainage grates in the path of travel, they should be this tight, with no more than a ½ inch, and they should be the dominant direction of path of travel should be perpendicular. That's so you aren't getting any kind of wheel caught into that. If you can avoid them in any any path of travel, do so, but if you have to, for some reason, you need to use those with elongated openings. Drainage. We have drainage issues. We're trying to get these compliant and they get filled with water because they're too flat or whatever. Just remember that you have to try and make those compliant. It's more difficult on, preservation jobs because you're dealing with a lot of existing infrastructure. Drainage is a reason for technical infeasibility. You can't get them flat or they're not gonna drain the water off. This is brand new, out in the rainstorm, but there's quite a lot of water there, it doesn't show that. Mid-block crossings, we have a lot of mid-block crossings in the state. Refer to our crosswalk policy. Some of them shouldn't be where they are. Some of them are not compliant, like this one, where they're just curbed. And people just, a lot of the towns will just strike over them. But it doesn't allow for an individual with a disability to get across it. Summer, you just have to work with the communities to see where they should be going. We've done quite a lot of that over the past couple of years. And come up with some really good solutions, I think. And again, crosswalk policy. On-street parking. If you're designing a new streetscape and you've got bump outs, that's great, but if you've got a crosswalk and a mid-block, you should not have any parking within 20 feet of the curb ramp on either side. And that's because, obviously, if you're in a wheelchair, you need to go up beyond the vehicle to see what's coming, and they have to see you, and it can be very dangerous. So we just don't allow that unless there's a bump out. And bump outs do allow for that, but then there are other issues around plowing and all that stuff. Median islands, and this answers the question from earlier. This is a median island for pedestrian refuge. So if you want a pedestrian to have a refuge island, then it should be 5 feet minimum, and you need to have detectable warnings on either side, and it needs to be 6 feet maximum, minimum, because you need to have space in between the detectable warnings. 2 feet and 2 feet and 2 feet. You can't have them on top of each other because they need a break in that to know that they're coming to a stop. Median islands can be at grade level or raised. To accommodate ADA, they need to be at least 6 feet wide. I went through this. And they need to be 2% crossroads going through them. So don't use detectable warnings on a single phase crossing. You don't want people stopping in the middle of a pedestrian signal phase. You may have to, if it's long enough, you may have to have a button in the middle, and that's okay. But don't have somebody stopping out there, listening to that thing beeping, counting them down, and not knowing what to do, because they're trained to stop at those. And that is the end of this presentation, and if you have any questions, I'm glad to give it a shot. If not, yes.
Town puts in their own detectable warning fields, not in an area that we normally would have put it, and it may not be the Waller standard. Are we required to go in and upgrade those?
If we're doing a appraisal project, yes. And it's not compliant yet. That happens a lot. We've done it ourselves.
Because, I mean, it's an area where we wouldn't have gone in and put them there. It's the fire department. They put them
No, like they chose to put it in the driveway or something,
Oh, yeah.
but then they put it in wrong, so.
Put it in wrong, but it's over something that isn't signalized intersection. Oh.
So we work hard to get it right.
I guess that would be a case to case. We're going to look at that. Just see, because, you know, some developers put them in at every entrance. You know, you'll go new hotel and it's just. But the community that works with the visually impaired and visually impaired community, they don't want to be stopping every time there's a, you know. But fire department, it might be justifiable. They can usually, some people are both blind and visually impaired, Ellen Keller, for instance, are hearing impaired, but they can hear that. So there's that too. I don't know. I have to look at the guidance for that. But what the guidance does for the ADA is you put them down, for the PROAG, actually, you put them down where they're acknowledging. So,
We don't wanna be adding a whole lot to our inventory.
You're right.
To avoid it.
we had an instance in, Wayne, where we worked with the community, because they have a big opening in front of their, post
Post
office.
office,
Yeah, so,
but it's a private parking area technically, it's not signalized, but they want, I actually asked the town to give us a formal request saying that they wanted them there.
Yeah.
And it ultimately is gonna end up on our inventory.
Right.
Like, I don't-
yeah. So, just shoot us an email. You'll find some of those.
One quick question about the, I guess it was the algebraic difference, between your road coming down and your curb ramp going up,
Yeah, yeah.
5% algebraic difference?
No.
No.
5%.
5%,
That's
the slope,
Oh,
shouldn't be
okay.
more than 5%. Now, so if it's up too high, it creates a problem for a wheelchair, but it's 5% and 8.3. It's
So
not
your
different,
roadway
it's
can
the
be up
5%.
to 5%, and then if, well, just say you could fit no more than you could flatten it no more than 6%, you would need a design exception.
Yeah, you probably wanna put that, it's right in, and I'm gonna go through that infeasibility form, yeah, and a lot of times when you've got a big crown, I mean, I know before Howell rebuilt, we weren't getting 5% for a cent, yeah.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but try to blend it as much as you can, that's kind of the